There are moments in life when you realize you've been living in a well-directed sitcom, but nobody told you that the script was written by someone with a particularly twisted sense of humor. That's exactly how I felt on that bizarre Tuesday afternoon when I found out that my wife, Laura, had been treating our marriage like a choose-your-own-adventure book, except I was stuck on the page where the protagonist is the fool, and she kept flipping ahead to the exciting parts without me. It all started with a closet. Not a metaphorical one, not some deep-seated emotional baggage, just a plain, ordinary, wooden closet in our house. The one in the guest bedroom, to be precise. I hadn't opened that thing in years. No reason to. The guest bedroom was more of a storage for things we might need but never actually use kind of place. Extra sheets, a suitcase with a broken wheel, a pile of Christmas decorations we always forgot about until mid-December. But that day, I needed an iron. A simple, normal, absolutely harmless iron to deal with the disastrous wrinkles on my shirt. And, as life would have it, the iron was not in the laundry room where it was supposed to be. It wasn't in our bedroom closet either. Naturally, that led me to the guest room. I yanked open the closet door, expecting to find nothing more than the usual household clutter. Instead, I found a masterpiece of architectural betrayal. It took me a second to process what I was looking at. The inside of our guest room closet had been modified. Not in the let's install some extra shelves kind of way. No, this was next-level interior design. There was a gap in the back wall, a narrow, well-disguised opening that had never been there before. Someone had gone through a great deal of trouble to cut out a section of the wall and turn it into a hidden compartment. I stared at it for a moment, completely baffled. Was this some kind of secret escape route? Had my house been part of a Prohibition-era smuggling operation that I was just now discovering? Curiosity beat logic, and I reached in, fingers tracing along the edges of the hidden space. That's when I felt something inside. Something smooth. Something that absolutely did not belong in the category of Christmas decorations or broken luggage. I pulled it out. And that's when my sitcom officially turned into a tragicomedy. It was a photo. A large, framed photo. And not just any photo. A beautifully staged, high-quality picture of my wife, Laura, in what looked like a luxurious hotel suite. With a man. Not me. Now, I'd like to tell you that my first thought was rational. Like, maybe this is a professional shoot for some project. But let's be honest, there is no logical reason why my wife would hide a professionally framed photo of herself with another man inside a secret compartment of our guest room closet. Unless, of course, she was starring in a long-running production titled Lies, Deception, and Questionable Life Choices, the Laura edition. I took a closer look. They weren't just standing together in some innocent, friendly pose. The way she leaned into him, the way his arm casually rested on her waist, the way they both looked a little too comfortable. Yeah. This was no business associate, no long-lost cousin. And just to really put the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday, there was a handwritten note at the bottom of the frame. For our secret moments. Always yours. Well, that was nice. At least she had a solid grasp of cliches. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding the picture, my brain doing its best to reboot. Let's recap. I had been married to Laura for almost a decade. A perfectly normal marriage, if you ignored the occasional arguments about why I never noticed when she got a haircut or why she felt the need to rearrange the kitchen cabinets every 3 months. We weren't in a honeymoon phase anymore, but we were stable, reliable. I thought we were happy. Apparently, she was even happier in places that required hidden compartments in our own home. The sheer absurdity of it all started sinking in. Who does this? Who hides physical evidence of their affair like some dramatic character in a crime novel? What was this? Some kind of romantic time capsule? And then, another thought hit me. Laura wasn't home, which meant I had time. A lot of people, when they discover their spouse is cheating, do something dramatic. Confront them immediately. Cry. Shout. Throw things. But me? I had questions. Why hide this here, in a closet we barely used? Why was the picture framed, of all things? Who was this guy? And, most importantly, was this an ongoing thing? Or had I just uncovered some relic from the past? I grabbed my phone, took a picture of the, picture, and started thinking. One thing was for sure, I was not about to walk into this confrontation without a solid game plan. Laura had been creative enough to carve out a secret space in our own home. That meant she wasn't just careless, she was calculated. And that meant I had to be smarter. So, I did what any self-respecting man with a broken sense of humor and a newfound interest in amateur detective work would do. I put the picture back, right where I found it, closed the closet, and waited. Because if Laura thought she was good at keeping secrets, she had no idea what I could do with a little time, a lot of patience, and the undeniable advantage of knowing the truth before she did. This sitcom wasn't over yet. It was just getting interesting. The thing about knowing something you're not supposed to know is that it turns every normal moment into a performance. You sit across from the person at breakfast, nodding along to whatever they're saying, but your mind is somewhere else entirely. You watch them send a text, wondering if it's to you or to the person they actually want to talk to. You hear them laugh at some TV show, and you wonder if that's the same laugh they use when they're with him. It's exhausting. But also, I have to admit, a little entertaining. Laura walked into the house that evening like nothing had changed. Because for her, nothing had. She was living in a world where I was still clueless, where she was still the perfect wife, where our life together was exactly as she wanted it to be: stable, predictable, easy. I was living in a different world. One where I knew that my wife had a hidden compartment in our guest room closet containing a framed picture of her and another man. One where I was about to find out exactly how long she had been running her little side project. "Hey, Edward," she said, tossing her purse onto the counter like she hadn't carefully hidden a significant part of her life from me. "How was your day?" "Oh, the usual," I said, watching her closely. "Had some unexpected discoveries. Bit of a learning experience." She didn't even flinch. "That's good," she said, opening the fridge like a person who wasn't secretly leading a double life. "Anything interesting?" "You could say that," I said, leaning back in my chair. "You." Same old," she said, pulling out a bottle of water. "Meetings, emails, the usual chaos." I wondered if she was picturing whatever it was she had really been doing while she said that. Probably. Or maybe lying was just so second nature at this point that she didn't even think about it anymore. Either way, it was impressive. A professional performance, really. And that was fine. She could keep pretending. I'd play along. For now. The next morning, Laura was out the door early, some vague explanation about work, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my newly acquired secret knowledge. I had options. Confront her? Too soon. Pretend nothing had happened? Not my style. If I was going to get to the bottom of this, I needed a plan. So, I started with the closet. I didn't just want to find the picture again. I wanted to see if there was anything else. If Laura had gone through the trouble of creating a secret space, maybe she had left more than just one piece of evidence. Maybe there was something else she thought I'd never find. I went through every inch of that hidden compartment, feeling around for anything else she might have tucked away. And sure enough, there was something. A key. Just a small, silver key, tucked into the corner. A key to what? I turned it over in my fingers, looking for any markings. Nothing. Just a plain key. Not a house key, not a car key, something else. I sat down, staring at it. If Laura had gone through the trouble of hiding it, that meant it was important. That meant it led to something. And I was going to find out exactly what. Now, I'd like to say I did something smart, like methodically checking every lock in the house, but let's be honest, if Laura had hidden it in the closet, it wasn't going to fit anything in the house. So I did the next logical thing. I waited. Laura came home that night just as relaxed as before. No idea that I had spent part of my day going through her hidden stash. No idea that I had her secret key. I watched her closely, waiting for any sign, any habit, any moment where she might slip up. And then, 3 nights later, I got my answer. Laura was heading out again, something about a team dinner. I casually asked, "Which car are you taking?" She hesitated. Just for a second. "The usual," she said, grabbing her keys. Except she grabbed her work bag, too. And I had never seen her take that to dinner before. She left, and I gave it 5 minutes before I checked the closet again. The key was gone. She had taken it. And that was all I needed to know. The next step was obvious. I had to follow her. Not in some dramatic, action movie way, just enough to see where she went. Because whatever she was using that key for, it wasn't something she wanted me to know about. I took my car, keeping a reasonable distance. It wasn't hard. Laura wasn't expecting to be followed. She wasn't worried. She thought I was at home, watching TV, being the trusting, oblivious husband she had assumed I always would be. She drove across town, past the nice restaurants, past the work-related places, into a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Then she pulled into a parking lot, a storage facility. I watched as she got out of the car, looked around casually, not suspiciously, not like she was expecting anyone to be watching, and then headed toward one of the units. A storage unit. She unlocked it, stepped inside, and closed the door behind her. I sat there, staring at the metal doors, trying to process what I had just seen. A hidden key. A secret storage unit. What exactly was my wife keeping in there? I wasn't going to find out tonight. Not yet. I had gotten this far, but if I rushed, if I got caught, she'd just change the game again. No. I was going to play this right. And when I finally opened that storage unit myself, I was going to be ready for whatever I found. The thing about having a wife who keeps secrets is that it forces you to learn patience. Not because you want to, but because if you rush, you mess up. And I wasn't about to mess this up. So, I waited. Laura didn't know that I knew about her little storage unit. She thought she was operating in her perfectly controlled version of reality, where she had everything hidden just well enough. But people get comfortable in their own lies. They start thinking they're smarter than everyone else. They start making mistakes. And I was waiting for hers. The problem was, I didn't have access to that storage unit. I had the key for about 12 hours before Laura took it back, which meant she was keeping it on her at all times. I needed another way in. So, I got creative. I started with the storage facility itself. These places aren't exactly Fort Knox, no matter how much they want you to believe they are. I spent my lunch break driving over there, casually walking in like I had a reason to be there. Nobody questions a guy walking around a storage facility. It's not like anyone goes there for fun. I took note of a few things. Security cameras were there, but not exactly covering every angle. The main office was small, just one bored-looking guy at a desk scrolling through his phone. The kind of guy who definitely wasn't getting paid enough to care about who came and went. Perfect. Now, I could have just waited for Laura to go back and followed her in, but that had too many ways to go wrong. No, I needed to get in on my own, which meant figuring out how these storage places handled lost keys. So, I lost one. Not the real one, obviously, but a key I had lying around that looked close enough. I walked into the office later that afternoon, looking as frustrated as possible. "Hey, man," I said, tossing the key onto the desk. "Tell me you guys have a way to get into my unit, because I'm a fool and this is apparently the wrong key." The guy barely looked up from his phone. "You can request a lock cut if you're the registered renter." "Yeah, totally," I said, nodding like I hadn't just made this entire problem up. "Just remind me what I need to do for that?" He finally gave me a real glance. "ID, proof that you're on the rental agreement, a form." "Ah, see, that's the problem," I said, running a hand through my hair like I was just a regular guy having a terrible day. "My brother's name is on the unit. It's a shared thing. I just really need to get in there today. He's out of town. He'll vouch for me, swear on my life, whatever you need." He looked at me like he was debating how much effort he actually wanted to put into this job. "You're not on the account. I can't do anything," he said, finally. Not surprising. But that was fine. I didn't need him to cut the lock. I just needed to know their process. "Got it," I said, sighing. "I'll get my moron brother to call you." "Thanks, man." I walked out, leaving my fake problem behind. But I had exactly what I needed. They didn't check security footage for every request. They didn't even seem to care that much. If someone came in, acted frustrated, and demanded access to a unit, all they did was check a name, which meant I just had to get the right name. And I already knew where to find it. That night, while Laura was in the shower, I went for her laptop. I had learned a long time ago that people were careless with their saved logins. And sure enough, she had an email from the storage place sitting right there in her inbox. A welcome email, with her full account details. And there it was, the name on the rental agreement. Not Laura. Some guy named Daniel Brooks. Now, that was interesting. Laura wasn't the primary renter on the unit, which meant she either shared it with someone, or she was covering for someone. Either way, I had what I needed. The next morning, I walked right back into that office, holding a piece of paper like it was important. "Hey, so I got in touch with my brother," I said, making sure I sounded both impatient and slightly desperate. "Daniel Brooks. He's on a work trip, but he emailed me his permission to access the unit. I printed it out for you." I handed it over, knowing full well that it was an email I had typed up myself last night, using a fake address I made in 5 minutes. The guy glanced at it, barely skimmed the words, and nodded. "All right, give me a second." And just like that, he gave me access. I walked down the row of storage units, my heart pounding just a little. Not because I was nervous. No, it was because whatever was in there was something Laura didn't want me to see. I found the unit, slid the key into the lock, and pulled the door open. At first, I thought maybe I had the wrong one. It wasn't what I expected. No suitcases full of money. No hidden love letters. No obvious signs of an affair. Instead, It was furniture. Old furniture. Some chairs, a desk, a few boxes. It looked like someone had just moved and dumped their extra stuff here. I walked in, closing the door behind me. If Laura had gone through the trouble of hiding this, there had to be something here worth hiding. I started with the boxes. The first one was full of books. The second one? Paperwork. Bills, old documents, nothing immediately suspicious. But then I found a folder. Inside? Lease agreements. Multiple. All signed by Daniel Brooks. And right there, listed as an occupant on one of them, Laura. I flipped through, scanning the addresses. The most recent one was an apartment downtown. So Laura didn't just have a storage unit. She had a second residence, one that I knew nothing about. I took a deep breath, staring at the papers in my hand. This wasn't just cheating. This was something else entirely. And I was about to find out exactly what. People say that finding out your spouse is cheating feels like getting punched in the gut. Those people are dramatic. There was no sudden collapse, no overwhelming wave of emotions sending me spiraling. It was more like discovering that your favorite coffee shop has been using decaf the entire time. A slow, creeping realization that everything you thought you knew was a lie, but instead of caffeine betrayal, it was my wife's secret second home with a man named Daniel Brooks. So, naturally, I made a plan. Laura was meticulous, which meant I couldn't just ask her a casual, "Oh, by the way, do you have a spare apartment you forgot to mention?" and expect her to crumble into a confession. No, she would have a lie prepared, a reasonable-sounding explanation for why her name was on a lease for a place I had never heard of. Probably something about helping out a friend, some convoluted excuse that technically made sense but also completely ignored reality. I had to see it for myself. The address on the lease was downtown, a newer apartment complex that looked a little too nice for just a friend needing help. I parked a block away, keeping my distance. I wasn't about to walk through the front doors like I belonged there. Instead, I watched. And that's when things got interesting. Because less than 20 minutes after I arrived, Laura showed up. She wasn't dressed for work, wasn't carrying groceries, wasn't doing anything that suggested this was just some side errand. No, she walked into that building like she lived there. No hesitation. No key fumbling. Just straight through the door, like she had done it 100 times before. Now, a normal person would have taken that as confirmation and left. But I've never been known for my restraint. I waited a few minutes, watching for any sign that this was some quick stop. Maybe she was dropping something off. Maybe she'd come right back out, and I'd have to rethink everything. But she didn't. I walked around the side of the building, checking for another way in. The back entrance required a key fob, which I obviously didn't have, but luck was on my side because someone else did. Some guy carrying a laundry basket walked up, swiped his fob, and held the door open long enough for me to step inside behind him. "Thanks, man," I said, casual as ever. He nodded, completely uninterested in the fact that I absolutely did not belong there. Now, I had two problems. One, I had no idea which apartment was hers. And two, I couldn't exactly knock on every door and ask, "Hey, is this the one where my wife is pretending she doesn't have a husband?" So, I did what any rational person would do. I checked the mailroom. It was a small area near the lobby, rows of metal mailboxes with names listed on tiny labels. And there it was, Daniel Brooks and Laura Steele. Not Daniel Brooks. Not Laura Steele. Both names. Together. Like a happy little couple who got mail and possibly matching bathrobes. Apartment 4C. I took the stairs instead of the elevator because I didn't need some friendly neighbor asking questions. When I reached the 4th floor, I hesitated for the first time. Not because I was second-guessing anything. I just needed to decide how far I was willing to take this. Breaking into a storage unit was one thing. Walking into a private apartment? That was a whole new level of bold. But then I reminded myself of something very important. Laura was inside. And I had a right to know exactly what my wife was doing in an apartment I wasn't supposed to know existed. So, I knocked. A casual, normal, I have no idea what's going on here kind of knock. A few seconds passed, then the door opened. And there she was. Laura. Standing in front of me, eyes widening in a way that was almost impressive. She didn't slam the door. Didn't immediately start making excuses. She just stared, her brain trying to process the situation in real time. I smiled. "Hey, honey. Nice place." She blinked. "What are you doing here?" "That's a great question," I said, stepping forward just enough that she had to make a choice. Let me in or cause a scene in the hallway. She let me in. The apartment was lived in. Not just a backup storage space, not some forgotten rental. There were pictures on the walls, shoes by the door, a coffee mug sitting half full on the counter. This wasn't some secret investment property. This was a home. How did you find this place? She asked, voice carefully neutral. That's what you want to start with? I laughed. Not why are you here? Not I can explain, just straight to logistics. Bold choice. She crossed her arms. Why are you here? Better, I said, looking around. Who's Daniel Brooks? Her jaw tightened, and there it was, the micro-expression people do when they realize they don't have a script for this part. He's a friend, she said. I nodded, walking over to the fridge. A couple of takeout containers, a carton of eggs, a bottle of coffee creamer, the kind Laura always used. I turned back to her. You live here, I said. Silence. You don't rent this for someone else. You don't come here once in a while. This is your actual home. Which is funny, because I was under the impression that we already had one of those. She exhaled slowly. Edward. Don't, I said, holding up a hand. Don't start with whatever excuse you're about to make. Just be honest with me for once. Can you do that? A pause. Then, it's not what you think, she said. I laughed. That's a terrible answer. She ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. I was going to tell you. Oh, sure, I said. That's why you have a secret storage unit full of documents you definitely weren't going to tell me about. Because honesty is clearly your top priority. She closed her eyes, inhaled, then opened them again. I was going to tell you, she repeated. I just needed to figure out how. I stared at her. Figure out how to tell your husband that you have a second home? Silence. Just tell me the truth, I said finally. No more games. No more deflecting. No more half-truths. Tell me exactly what this is. She hesitated. And then she did something I wasn't expecting. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and sent a single text. A second later, the front door unlocked. And in walked Daniel Brooks. There are moments in life when you realize you've walked straight into a situation that no amount of logical thinking could have prepared you for. Standing in an apartment I didn't know existed, looking at my wife, and watching a man named Daniel Brooks step inside like he owned the place. Yeah, that was one of those moments. The guy wasn't what I expected. No suit, no expensive watch, no smug look that screamed. Yeah, I'm the one your wife's been sneaking around with. He was just average. Late 30s, wearing jeans and a plain button-down, the kind of guy you forget 5 minutes after seeing him. That irritated me more than it should have. If you're going to wreck a marriage, at least have the decency to be memorable. Daniel stopped mid-step when he saw me. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion, then shifted to something else, something between discomfort and annoyance. You didn't tell me he was coming, he said to Laura. So we were skipping the usual fake pleasantries. She didn't invite me, I said, turning to Laura. I had to figure it out all by myself. Shocking, right? Given how open and honest our marriage has always been. Laura exhaled sharply, rubbing her forehead like I was the problem here. Edward, just listen. That's funny, I interrupted. Because if there's one person in this room who's been listening this whole time, it's me. Listening to excuses, half-truths, and whatever ridiculous story you were about to come up with just now. Daniel shifted his weight, clearing his throat. Look, man, I get that you're upset. I turned to him so fast he actually took a step back. Daniel, I said, keeping my voice completely calm. Do not, under any circumstances, start a sentence with, I get that you're upset. You don't get anything. If you did, I wouldn't be here right now. He opened his mouth, then wisely shut it. Laura crossed her arms. It's complicated. I laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, I bet it is. Let's see, secret apartment, secret storage unit, secret Daniel. Yeah, Laura, I'd say that's a pretty complicated way of explaining I've been lying to my husband for God knows how long. She sighed. I wasn't lying. Daniel muttered something under his breath. I turned to him. Sorry, what was that? He shook his head. Nothing. No, don't hold back now, I said, tilting my head. I came all this way. Give me the full Daniel Brooks experience. He looked at Laura, then back at me. I just meant, she wasn't really lying. Just keeping things separate. Keeping things separate, I repeated, nodding slowly. That's an interesting way to describe a whole second life. Laura groaned. Can we not do this here? Oh, I'm sorry, I said. Would you prefer we do this at our actual house? Oh wait, you don't live there anymore, do you? She didn't answer. I exhaled, shaking my head. You know what? It doesn't matter. I don't actually care why you did it. I just care about what happens next. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, looking at Laura, that I don't waste time on things that are already broken. So congratulations, Laura. You've officially freed yourself from the burden of being my wife. I'd say I hope you two are happy together, but honestly, I don't care enough to pretend. She blinked. That's it. That's it, I said. I just have one request. She narrowed her eyes. What? I pulled my phone out of my pocket, tapped a few buttons, and turned the screen toward them. It was a bank transfer. From our joint account. A very, very large one. To me. Laura's face drained of color. What did you do? I smiled. Oh, nothing much. Just transferred every single dollar out of our joint account about 5 minutes before I walked through that door. Daniel's head snapped toward her. You let him do that? I didn't know he was going to do that, she snapped. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. That's the thing about secrets, Laura. The person keeping them always assumes they're the smartest one in the room. But you weren't smart enough to remember that I handle all the finances. You never checked the accounts. Never even questioned where the money was. And now? Well, that's your problem. She inhaled sharply. You can't just take everything. Legally, I can, I said. Because guess whose name was the primary on that account? Hint, not yours. Daniel took another step back, as if the financial fallout might be contagious. I turned to him. You should probably figure out how much money she actually has. Because as of now, she's not bringing much to the table. Hope you weren't in this for the financial stability. Daniel looked like he regretted every life choice that had led him to this moment. I turned back to Laura. You wanted a fresh start? You got one. Enjoy your life, Laura. I know I will. And with that, I walked out. She didn't follow me. Neither did Daniel. I had a lot of things to figure out, lawyers, paperwork, next steps, but one thing was already crystal clear. I had just one. Some people think revenge is about big, dramatic gestures. Smashing things, screaming in public, throwing someone's clothes out onto the street. Personally, I think that's lazy. If you really want to get under someone's skin, if you want them to feel the consequences of their choices, you don't go for the obvious. You go for the things that will keep them up at night, replaying every decision they ever made. Which is exactly what I did. I left Laura standing there, her world crashing down around her, and I didn't look back. Not because I was some noble man walking away from a burning bridge, but because I had other things to take care of. Like making sure that Laura's fresh start was as inconvenient as possible. First, I called the bank. The joint account was already empty, but Laura had a credit card in both our names. I canceled it. She wasn't going to be using my financial history to keep up whatever nonsense life she had planned with Daniel Brooks. Then, I made my way home. I say home, but really, it was just a house at that point. A place where a lot of things had happened, sure, but none of it mattered now. I started packing immediately. Not because I was sad, not because I needed a fresh start, but because I refused to let Laura be the one who dictated what happened next. She wasn't getting our house. She wasn't getting our furniture. And she definitely wasn't getting the satisfaction of thinking she had any power left. While I was sorting through things, my phone buzzed. I expected a message from Laura, some dramatic plea, some weak attempt at an explanation, but no. It was Daniel. Daniel Brooks, we need to talk. Oh, we do, huh? I ignored it. Let him sit in his panic. Let him wonder what I was planning. He'd already gotten more of my time than he deserved. A few hours later, I got the message I was actually waiting for. Laura, we need to talk. I sat back, grinning at the predictability of it all. Me? About what? Laura, you know what? Me, do I? Because last time we talked, you were busy pretending you hadn't been lying to me for months. So forgive me if I need a little clarification. She called. I let it ring. Then, another text. Laura, you emptied our account. Me, my account. Laura, that's not fair. I actually laughed. Out loud. Me, neither is having a second apartment with another man, but you didn't seem too concerned about fairness then. She didn't reply right away. Probably trying to come up with something clever. A minute later. Laura, this doesn't have to be ugly. Me, oh, but it does. I could almost feel her frustration through the screen. Laura, we were going to talk about everything. I just needed time. Me, that's funny, because I had plenty of time to find out everything on my own. What a weird coincidence. Silence. Then, Laura, can we meet? Please. Ah, there it was. The desperation creeping in. Not full panic yet, but close. Me. Sure. I'll send you my lawyer's number. You can schedule a meeting that way. She called again. I let it ring. The next few days were quiet. Suspiciously quiet. No messages, no dramatic doorstep appearances, no mutual friends calling me to say that Laura was so sorry and just wants to talk. It wasn't over, though. Not even close. Because while I had been making sure she had nothing left in our accounts, I had also been setting up something else. Something better. Laura had an image. She was the responsible one, the planner, the mature person in our relationship. The kind of woman who people admired, who always seemed to have it all together. That's why this whole thing was so fun, because I was about to change that image permanently. She had spent the last few years carefully curating a perfect life on social media. Work accomplishments, carefully selected photos, captions that made it seem like she was winning at life. So, I did the only reasonable thing. I posted an update of my own. Not an angry rant. Not some emotional plea for sympathy. Just a simple, well-crafted message. After 10 years of marriage, I've decided to let Laura start her new life with Daniel Brooks in the apartment they've been secretly sharing. Best of luck to them. Cheers to fresh starts. And then, the best part, I turned off comments. No explanations, no back and forths. Just facts. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up. Mutual friends, coworkers, even people I barely talked to, all wanting the details. I didn't respond to a single one. Because this wasn't about starting drama. This was about exposing what Laura had been trying so hard to keep hidden. By the end of the day, Laura had deleted her account. By the next day, Daniel had deleted his. And by the third day, a text. Laura, you're a real piece of work. Me, and you're unemployed. She didn't answer, but I knew she got the message loud and clear. Because in all of Laura's careful planning, in all of her sneaking around, she had made one very big mistake. She had been using company funds to help cover rent on that second apartment. And now, thanks to a very detailed, anonymous email with attached lease agreements sent to her employer, she no longer had a job. Daniel, from what I had gathered, wasn't exactly a financial genius, which meant the happy little future they had planned was about to get a whole lot messier. I wasn't going to waste another second on them. I packed up what I wanted, sold the rest, and left. No drawn-out conversations, no dramatic fights. I had taken my time setting this up. I had made sure every little detail was exactly how I wanted it. And now, finally, I was done. Laura wanted a fresh start? She got one. Just not the one she planned. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel